What are some misconceptions you hear?
The biggest one is that, it's our job to sell the vendor contracts. And I think another one that goes hand in glove with that one is that the GPO makes the hospital decision. Me and my peers, we have over 2,500 unique agreements, right? So we have contracts from everything from pens and paper to pacemakers. All of our awards are 100% chosen by our memberships. So the membership committees are all members, and they're the ones who vote on these contracts.
All right, hey, welcome to another episode of Tuesday Talks with Toomey. Today I'm really excited. We have to do something a little different. We're going to hear from the inside voice, if you would, from one of the GPOs. But today we've got Chad McCormick. He's a senior account executive. Chad, just tell me quickly, a little about yourself, your role, how long you've been there, and then we can dive into some questions.
Yeah, Dan, thanks for the time. Chad McCormick, been in Premier, going to be 11 years now in November. Was with one of the other GPOs before that for about another 4 years. So been in the space almost 15 now. And then before that, worked with some suppliers.
Good. So you have a little bit of like both sides of the fence. You've seen how the world works from, again, multiple GPOs. You've seen it from multiple vendors and your partnerships there, and then having suppliers / distribution as well in your background. Like you kind of see the pieces come together over time of like what it good looks like, right? What is reality of how to work with the GPOs to navigate your contract and implement it a lot smoother, right? There's a lot of roadblocks that we hit. So yeah, I'm really excited to have you on and get some insights from you. So today, one of the things we want to talk about is kind of that perspective, a member's perspective from the GPO, and how the field reps, right? So Premier has RDs, whether it's client executives from other places or it's field representations. So specifically the RDs and your team and your time as an RD as well as now as a senior account executive. Let's talk about what that role is, right? Let's talk about maybe some of the things that vendors out there today, manufacturers, industry partners, maybe just don't realize that happens with those RDs and your team. Right. So let's start there. Clarify what your role is. Talk about your role, what the role of the RD really is, what your team does, and some of those key responsibilities they have.
The best description, right, is we have to act as a liaison between our membership and our vendor supplier partners, right? Me and my peers, we have over 2,500 unique agreements, right? So we have contracts from everything from pens and paper to pacemakers. So we run the gamut. And then you can even get into revenue cycle, finance, things like that, where, not a lot of us are subject matter experts. But what our role and our expectations is to be a strategic advisor or an extension of our members' teams, right? We have relationships in supply chain. We have relationships in the executive suites. Some of us have relationships in other parts of the organization. And I think it's the more you become a partner, trusted advisor with those members, the more you start to understand what their needs, what their outcomes are. And I think our greatest job responsibility is working to understand those hospitals and understanding the portfolios that we have to offer and how to provide them value and performance improvement to make sure they're getting what they need out of those relationships.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot to take on. I mean, having 125 unique contracts to navigate and not consistency in like a category, but across all contracting platforms. How does your team keep up with the different dynamics of categories? From what a contracting, whether it's the cycle obviously of the GPO, but what is the member looking for? And, if you're going from paper to tables, or in other products that just kind of on that array of needs, how do you keep track of all that?
I think it goes back to each member's unique, right? Even being on the GPO side, each member has a lot of unique partnerships with different suppliers, right? So first, you need to work with the member to understand, hey, what's out there? What are your runways? You can present them the Premier contract catalog or the GPO contract catalog, and better align with their expirations on some of their contracts, and just first of all is getting that alignment. Secondarily, then I think you need to look at the portfolio of products. Each GPO has committed partnerships, committed programs, um, whether it be a national program like Ascend Drive or Surpass with Premier, um, or the standardization programs with Vizient. Whatever it is, those are going to be the main focus of the GPO team, is making sure members are committed and are living up to their commitments in those programs. But then secondarily, you need to look at the national portfolio, right? And that's where you get really all over the board. A lot of the committed programs, are a lot of blocking and tackling Me Too products, just the run of the mill gloves, gowns. Um, some of the programs get into physician preference, physician choice, whether it be pacemakers, implantable infusion ports, whatever. But it's just understanding, helping the members understand the commitment they've made to which programs, and then how to best fit those programs into what the member is expecting to see. Right. I mean, there's
Got
some
it.
cases where as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, right? There's a lot of competing priorities for a healthcare supply chain these days, right? We have GPO partnerships, you have distributor partnerships, you have vendor partnerships where we have a lot of large vendors buying into a lot of spaces, whether that be BD, Baxter, Cardinal, Medline on the distribution side. It's it's it goes back to being, you know, listening to your member and understanding how to best make it all fit together and make them successful.
No, it's good. I mean, it's a lot of communication, right? A lot of integration there with those facilities that you represent, and like you said, that liaison, but kind of acting as the arm for them sometimes to help navigate those channels. Which you're right, which is what you're doing. You're helping the member navigate their own contracts, while national account directors, right, health system managers are trying to help navigate the contracts from the manufacturing side. And you're kind of this linchpin in the middle of like, man, how do we get them to help us? Because it's a good bridge between, the member and the contract, and then of course the manufacturer. So now it gives a good insights in the background on what you're doing on a daily basis and what you're focusing on. We'll talk about misconceptions, on the flip side of this. What are some of the things that you have found, or you think that some of the vendors on contract think that you do? Like, what do they expect? Like, what are some of the misconceptions you hear, or things they're like, hey, why don't you help us here? Let's talk through that for a little bit.
Yeah, so I think we're both smiling because I think we kind of understand this, right? I think the biggest one is that it's our job to sell the vendor contracts. That would be the biggest. And I think another one that goes hand in glove with that one is that the GPO makes the hospital decision, right? So, if you're a new supplier, or even a supplier that's been a partner for a long time with committed program access, like, we still need to work together with those members to show the continued value and what nuanced and what opportunities those agreements are bringing, and innovations, and just to keep moving that ball forward. Because again, no matter how ingrained or entrusted you are as a GPO with your hospitals, they're getting inundated with other opportunities and other noise from, whether it be nursing, physicians,
Hmm.
different departments. And it's just how you continuously show that value by partnering together and working with your supplier partners to continue to bring that, um, value prop of those relationships. And I think the other big caveat that that's out there is all of our awards are 100% chosen by our memberships. So the membership committees are all members, and they're the ones who vote on these contracts. So I think there's a lot of, you know, heartburn angst in the market from some of the hospitals about why GPOs make the decisions they do. And I think they do
Hmm.
need to understand that there is a lot of thought. It's not just rubber stamping of these agreements. These committees look at value, opportunity, um, the the challenge of change, the cost of change with, how's it going to affect the frontline staff and how they treat the patient. And I think I've always coached those members who have challenges in those agreements to join a committee, right? Come and see how it's
Yeah.
made and see where you can help. Um, because it's not just a rubber stamp process. There is a lot of thought that goes into this, and you know, you can be a you can be a large supplier that has all contracts and committed programs and all contracts on national agreements, or you can be a small niche supplier trying to get a relationship with a GPO. And at the end of the day, you still need to show your value prop. You still need to know the problem you're trying to solve, and you need to make sure you're showing that problem to the GPO rep and say, "Hey, I'm reaching out to you because your member has this problem for this publicly available data or whatever. These are the people I've talked to. They've asked about this," and that's going to be a way to at least engage the GPO rep and try to further that conversation versus just the "Hey, I blasted 1,000 emails today" without any specific information.
So let's talk about that for a little bit then. Let's just like talk about proper engagement, right? You're if you know the crowd is the audience listening today is like, okay, so I've got to reach out and I've got to bring my value prop. So I'm going to send an email to every single RD out there, and try to get it across the country so I can maybe do a little fishing here. Is that, how effective is that? But what is effective? Like what should they be bringing to you? What steps do why would you choose one over the other in the hierarchy? Like things that stand out to you and an engagement from manufacturer of, what, this could help me out. This could help my member out. Let me take this one over this email.
I mean, I'm not going to say that phishing is wrong, right? I mean, I think to your point, anytime you want to send out a mass email, you're going to get a response, and there's just going to be certain field people who definitely respond to everyone who reaches out as time allows, and there's some that aren't because you know we've we've probably tried that category, we've done something with that before, and we just kind of know. So I think there's two approaches, right? Is blast it out and see what you get back. I mean, it's always good to get information out there about new agreements because even if it doesn't fit what we're trying to do today, we could always look back and be like, oh, wait, I got this email back about X a couple months ago. Let's look back now because the
Mhm.
question just came up,
Yeah.
or, issues with reimbursement, quality issues, something comes up and they're like, oh, I've got this email. So just because you don't get a response doesn't mean it wasn't received and read. It's just where it goes along in the member's current process for contracting. Um, the other part of that is I think when you reach out, especially with the premier people that have larger members, is one, you need to answer a question that that the member has, right? At that point, if you have specific information about X health system in New York, right? And your product is going to fix a problem, let that GPO person know, like, hey, we know that your member has this problem. This is what our product is going to do differently and help that problem. And these are the people that we have at least engaged with at the local level, hospital wise, to talk about that. Because then on our side, we can take that back to supply chain or to the clinicians, whomever we're working with, and be like, look, here is a problem that's been presented. This supplier has brought up an opportunity and they've talked to these people. Is this request in your new product request system? Has this product issue been brought up? And that goes back to the whole ecosystem of partnership, right? Like, there's a lot of us who have those relationships in different areas that can help facilitate that conversation where, in some cases, supply chain isn't going to respond to that email because they aren't always aware of maybe groundswell that's going on with that product in facilities. Or at the same time, the facilities might not understand what decision has already been made by the health system to address that problem. Right. So it's just kind of being that conduit of how you can be all things to all people and make sure that you're answering the question.
Yeah. I like how you kind of laid that out. One of the things that we used to do with my teams, right, was really focusing on like how to get the attention. Like what information should you use? The traditional, hey, I'm going to be in the area. Can I stop by and say hello and give you a review of our contract? Or do you have time to meet for a cup of coffee and I'll give you all the bullet points of the contract? Yeah, it's great. Everyone loves to meet in person, but realistically, you just mentioned you got 125,
2,500.
2,500, right? 2,500, of these coming, it's just like in different categories and different members. Like it's impossible. It's impossible. So you got to stand out. So we would create a template for our sales team, right? The national accounts team would offer as part of the launch packet. We would say, hey, here's your your field reps in your area are tied to these hospitals because if you're a contracted supplier, you'd get that information from the roster. And then we would tell them, listen, send an email with, hey, we have a contract number. Here's the start date, the expiration date. Here's a value add if you've got any rebates built into it. And then I think you just nailed it, right? Including here is an issue that we know of, and here's who we've spoken to so far. And we believe we're fixing this issue or addressing this issue, whether it's clinically, financial, time, whatever it may be. Could you really help us understand if this value fits the need and does it need to go through supply chain value analysis, et cetera, right? It's a direct ask and it's also giving you information to review it and say, wow, they've done some footwork. There is a wall here. I know that wall. I could probably get it over the wall because it would bring value to the member, right? Does that sound like something that would be helpful to the, in your team if someone was be a little bit more diligent in sending information that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely because then you're going to, again, it's not just a push, it's an ask. And I think as we've worked together in the past, right, it may not lead to something in the short term, but I think just being aware of those opportunities and understanding, the value that some vendor partners bring, whether it's just picking up the phone, being like, hey, I heard about this problem. We have a solution, but I think they're doing this, or, you know what I mean? Just how do we continue the conversation by keeping the hospital system as the center, right? I mean, we all have different contacts. We all have different people that we can work with. And in some cases, we understand that, certain projects aren't going to be a go because of other things that are happening. So, yes, I mean, I think that definitely arms, because then we could bring that back to clinical leadership. We could bring that back to supply chain. I mean, we had an issue, an opportunity at one of my health systems a couple months back where there was an OBGYN case where they had asked to use a new kit to do a procedure that they hadn't done before. And it was brought in through value analysis. Value analysis rejected it because there was a competitive, committed program contract. And it was just shut down for that reason. There was no other questions. There was no other around the product. So, in some cases, I think you've already turned off that physician who was asking and providing information. You didn't fully understand the request. So when that came to me, a supplier partner reached out to me. We talked about it, and I basically said, look, like I can't help with your product necessarily because it is a committed program, but we could work together to understand, one, is that a procedure the facility should be doing more often or as a standard protocol? Two, is a kit the right approach? And three, maybe there is an option to not use the committed program because it is out of the scope. I mean, I think there's a lot more conversation to be had than just no. So what I did with that information is I took it to the chief quality officer and said, hey, here's some information. I think you need to review it as an opportunity for a new procedure that you should be doing and go from there. And I think, again, they did not choose the supplier that brought it to me. They chose the committed program supplier, but they're also aware that a third party, fourth party to this event brought an opportunity to them. So now, next time, if they come to them with other innovative ideas, they're going to be more likely to listen to them and hear them out because it was like, look, like, I know it's competitive, but here's our way around it, or here's our option to not violate that agreement. But this is going to lead to additional revenue for your health system.
That's pretty fascinating. I've actually never even thought of it from that angle of how close you are to the business and having the ability to look at procedural data as well, right? And if you see value, and I talk about this all the time, you know, your overall value is what's the most important. What are you bringing to the table that offers savings up front, downstream savings, revenue changes, clinical outcomes, and ultimately what's really helping the patient? But if you can build a relationship or have a unique enough value prop, and you know the RD or the field representative can actually get there and see procedural data and say, wow, this could actually increase revenues because we're able to do this procedure now or more of it. It's a game changer, right? That's helping put some more pieces of the story together for value analysis, because it, right, on contract is important, especially if it's a performance group or, you know, a committed program. But if this product can do something different than what's on contract and it has substantial revenue and clinical outcomes, someone's going to want to look at it. And you might be missing that piece of the puzzle. And if you know you can really show that information with clinical data, with information that you've already proven, then bringing that, right, and sending that to you and saying, hey, just review this and see if you agree that we really could make an impactful change. It's just not another Me Too product.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's now with some of our health systems that we're working with, right? When you get clinical engagement, those are the questions and the pain points and pushbacks that we're getting, right? And it's a lot more with the committed programs is trying to understand, you know, there's a price pressure, but there's also a lot of back end, you know, there's already staffing shortages, there's conversion fatigue, there's a bunch of stuff going on. But as long, to your point, as long as you can show them the roadmap to why you're doing it, the value you're bringing, how you're making their life easier, and prove it out, um, that's to your point. That's going to be how we all work together to make sure there is one common approach to the end of the
Yeah.
day, the patient. We have a lot of members that come to us looking for trying to think this one out. Um, well, or when you're a new supplier coming in, right? Like if you're a small supplier, a niche supplier, whatever, that's going to be the biggest thing is how it breaks up some of those perceived bundles from the larger suppliers, right? Like what are you trying to solve and show me what the issue is? Because if you think about it, you could have at one time, if you look at a value analysis software for a health system, you could have 40 requests from across the system for the same product that's going to
Mm-hmm.
solve the same problem. And oh, by the way, what if that problem was just addressed with a GPO contract that was just awarded 6 months ago? So are you wasting your time at that point because you've
Yeah.
come in after the fact? It's already been addressed. But to your point, if you bring in the clinical data to show, look, there is a there is a readmission issue, there is a pressure injury issue, there is a length of stay issue, something, or this case is really expensive with certain physicians because they're using this product, but we have this other product. I mean, there's little things, little changes that can be made there that lead to thousands and thousands of dollars that some people may see in a couch cushion and they'll never see on a GPO contract, but our GPO contracts will help get that value because it's a different mousetrap.
Yeah, I kind of think about right. I mean, this could be part of those misconceptions and also part of effective engagement, right? Your job isn't like, hey, I didn't get this on contract. Can you help me just get in the door now, right? You're not trying to just weasel in off contract spend. That's the misconception, right? Don't come to you and say, hey, help me find sales just because I didn't get the national, so I got to use every resource. You're never going to get anywhere that way. But it you know there might be on and off contract conversations if it's bringing enough value and savings to the hospital or revenue or clinical outcomes that really improve something that they don't have quite in place. Then it could be more of a local conversation that you could have with your member, and they would have the ability to say, hey, this is something we really want to look at, versus it's not on the national, right? And we're not pushing it from this side. We're pushing this as truly as local. Is that fair assessment of an opportunity that could bring, or is it really going to be like, hey, listen, let's just stay away from that altogether?
Yeah, no, I mean, my perspective, right, is right now we all understand the pressures that everyone's under, whether it be the health systems, whether it be provider, or whether it be suppliers, everybody. So if you're truly seen as that trusted advisor in our role as I see us, like it is working with the suppliers to say, look, we have these categories under contract, but if this isn't under a contract, let's look at a portfolio of opportunities and see how we can maximize the value back to those hospital partners. And to your point, if there is value in bringing some of those other categories that are not on a GPO contract, not on a national contract, not committed, whatever, by showing uptick with some of those GPO contracts and non GPO contracts, that will then, on the back end, arm our sourcing team with data to say, look, like maybe we should put this on a contract because it's working at X, Y, and Z. Maybe we're missing the boat there with some
Yeah.
new green space.
No, it's fantastic. It's really good advice, and a really different angle to kind of think about as you're working with who am I going to communicate with and why. Um, well, you kind of mentioned it, right? I mean, in a sense of best practices and but if you could just think of, you don't, keep it vanilla, of course, but a supplier that's really engaged with you and how they got you involved, and that actually turned into a really good opportunity for your member.
Um, I think it goes back to everything we're talking about, right? I mean, if you stick to the value prop and you're like, I mean, we can think of pre-COVID. I think I worked with one of our premier partners to do their first value-based contracting on pressure injuries. Um, we had a health system that was able to reduce injuries by 30% within the first quarter. And that's just them being on site working with the data. So it's keeping focused on what the change is and what the value it's going to bring to the member, right? Because when you think of supply chain, right, wrong, or indifferent, a lot of them see numbers on a sheet of paper and they don't
Hmm.
always understand that a couple more pennies may save you on the back end. That's why, as we get more of these health systems that are getting clinicians in the supply chain office or more actively engaged, I know we all have had value analysis fits and starts, and we all have physicians that we talk to. But the more that health systems become committed to having a physician in the day to day, understanding
Hmm.
everything from when a product gets in to when the product is reimbursed on the back end, and all those levers that go in between, that's what's really going to start driving the value because you can get a great price on day one, but if you use that product but don't bill the patient, what does a price matter because you didn't get it reimbursed for it? So there's a lot that goes in between there. And I think as long as you keep the value prop on, this is our product, this is the value we're going to drive, this is the problem it's going to solve, and this is how we're going to work with your end users to make them successful. And I think that's actually the last part about implementation and acceptance with the end users is starting to become, I think, an even more important, bigger challenge or more obvious opportunity, because a lot of decisions can be made based on meetings and things like that. Where, so if you think of an instance I have with a DME opportunity, right, is there is one supplier who has an iPad solution where you have to log in and code the product. There's another supplier that has an RFID tag solution where you go take the product, it's assigned to the person who took it, like a Pixis system, and then it stays with that person who has it until they check it back in, right?
Mm-hmm.
In some cases, based on how the suppliers present their opportunity, if they're not focused on the right traps, value adds, opportunities of their business, they may not, the hospitals may not fully understand that, right? So we have an example where someone I'm working with chose the solution that was the iPad, right? It was a partner that they had a relationship. There's nothing wrong with that relationship. It's bringing them value. They're successful with it. There's just some additional opportunities. But in a lot of cases, we thought the RFID tagging was a disruptive technology that would save time, click, take a lot of stress off of the nursing staff, the frontline nursing staff in the emergency department for a couple $100 extra a month. And now we're finding out that the iPad solution, the nurse has to go in and log in with their email multiple times and then type in a part number or scan in the product while they're doing their day job of being a nurse and serving patients. And, we're working to calculate how effective that is at capturing those starters versus just being able to take it out of a cabinet, scan it,
Mm-hmm.
and be done with it. So there's things
Yeah.
like that where I think suppliers and even like, I think all of us get so comfortable in what we're doing, we forget the core benefits and the core differentiators of why we're doing what we're doing and why we're in the market.
Yeah, that is a very big statement. In general for everybody, right? As a sales rep, someone that's in R&D, someone that's in marketing, someone that's in finance, someone that sits in the hospital in different departments, you get so caught up in the day-to-day work and through sometimes the mundane work, and paperwork and things you have to do. But the reality is we often forget that what we're doing is to improve patient care and to do it as most cost effective as we can by choosing the right product and the right service, and putting that all together. So I really appreciate the way you have kind of tied that out as another example of uniqueness of building a good relationship with your GPO. It's more than just a door opener. When you have a good relationship and you understand the channels and the tentacles of a GPO contract, you can see that there's layers upon layers upon layers of support you can get. Introductions, great. Is this information suitable for this member? They have this problem. Can you help me get through this gatekeeper or this barrier? Yes. Hey, is there any other opportunities you can think of that could really open this door up that maybe be a differentiator for the member? Because maybe that helps gain market share that you need to get attention of a performance group down the road. But if you're bringing the value prop, you're bringing the true information to you, and then you can assess it within your members and say, yep, this is an amazing fit. And it might not be for all the hospitals that you cover, but it could be for one or two who have that immediate need. And then you building a relationship internally, right? And it benefits the member, it benefits the vendor, it benefits you and your team, right? And ultimately, the patient. So like just that unbelievable domino effect of asking questions and getting to know your GPO better can absolutely benefit you in the long run, It may not always be, the immediate door opener, the immediate sale that everybody wants. I know the C-suite always wants to see fastest possible revenue, but the reality is, if you can integrate yourself into the layers of the GPO, there's endless opportunities to build relationships, build business, and get your company out there in front of the members faster and more effectively. So it's great. That's great.
Yeah, and
Chad,
I mean, I think that's a good point, right? Because I think, especially in the non standardization or committed program suppliers, they get frustrated after a couple cycles when they're on a national, and they have competitive products on committed programs. But I think, to your point and to how this all ties together, again, there's a reason they're in the market, and if they
mhm,
can adequately tell that story and start gaining market share with that story, that's your door into getting to committed programs. I mean, especially now, historically, it may have felt that committed programs just stay with the same suppliers to not, force change. But I think, again, the market we're in and what everyone's feeling is the membership, it feels, is willing to make changes and willing to look at other opportunities that maybe historically they would not have been, to, you know, fill the gap on cost pressures, fill the gap on cost on staffing shortages, um, workload on the people that they have today. How do you make the process easier? So there is a lot of things I think together we could work on to help develop and grow these partnerships for everybody. I mean, there's enough for all of us to eat, and we all,
yeah,
we're all, at the end of the day, is if we keep the focus on the patient, like we keep saying, and that's all of our goals is, you know, how do we help those developing suppliers, or the ones that aren't on committed programs? How do we help them get to a position where they can win an award like that, or how can they be a disruptor?
yeah, that's great. That's great. Um, you gave us a lot of great tidbits today. A lot of information that I don't think really people get a chance to ask. And I appreciate you coming on to kind of open that door a little bit around just better partnerships, right? How to think differently, what resources are out there, and like we talked about, is just bringing that value to the table up front, and I think a good formatted way. So yeah, I want to thank you for coming on today, and I want to thank you for giving a little bit of behind the scenes of what that role is for you, your team, and the GPO relationship. And I'd love to have you back on to another episode here one day to talk about more around just kind of how we can how the national accounts teams can work better with their GPO to be more successful. So Chad, thanks for today, and yeah, anytime. You're always
No,
welcome
thanks, Dan.
back.
Love it. Great conversation.
All right, thank you.